This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
It seemed like this week we were going to have a quieter week in terms of big AI releases that you can actually use today. But then late Thursday, we got a new, soon to be open source model that completely resets the proprietary versus open framework. So, yeah, as always, some surprises, some new updates, and some quality of life improvements. So, if you spend most of your week inside of AI tools, the problem is under the hood and sometimes only on a random tweet, these companies release some big updates that change how all of these products work. And unless you spend hours, you're going to miss those. But that's what we do on our Friday Features show. So, on today's show, you're going to learn what open source model is, again, resetting the open versus proprietary landscape. You're going to learn how Claude on desktop is getting a lot more useful. And you're going to see why OpenAI made another big change to its new and very popular ChatGPT Work desktop app. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to Everyday AI. My name's Jordan Wilson, and we do this every day. This is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping business leaders like you and me keep up with the nonstop avalanche of AI updates. I tell you what matters, what doesn't. You use that information to be the smartest person in AI at your company. Everyone's like, wow, how'd you do this? And you're like, well, I went to youreverydayai.com and signed up for the free daily newsletter. And, well, you listen on the podcast and maybe on the live stream. So thanks for doing that. And if you are looking for that AI news, make sure to check it out in today's newsletter. All right, let's get straight into it and talk about our first new update, which I'm like, bless up, it's about time, because I don't know about you, but with all these desktop apps, I've been trying to use them just like never leaving. So when I go into, as an example, Codex/ChatGPT Work, I try to not leave, right? Really change how I do my work. And one of the big downsides with Claude Desktop is you really couldn't do that until this week. That's because Anthropic did finally add their new desktop browser. So yeah, bringing a browser inside of Claude Desktop. So here's what's new. Anthropic added a built-in browser to the Claude Code desktop app, which lets Claude open external websites and actually click, type, and interact inside of them while it works on your code. So Claude can now open whatever you need inside of the Claude app, whether that's your API docs, a bug tracker, dashboard, whatever it may be. So it's not just reading the pages inside of there, it can act on them. Anthropic says safety is layered in as classifiers review every click and keystroke Claude makes on external sites. And the first time Claude touches a new site, you get a permissions card to allow or deny it. Every site needs its own approval. So that's one of the things for me. I'm like, that's a downside. But overall, this is a big step forward for Anthropic, putting it more in parity, mainly with Codex/ChatGPT Work and also Cursor, which I've always said were the top two in terms of super app. So now Anthropic Claude Desktop can finally enter the conversation, and we'll see, presumably, we'll have Windows with their new super app, Microsoft Copilot, entering. We think it should be probably by next month. So who has access? Anyone running the Claude Code, or, I just call it the Claude Desktop app because it's not just Claude Code, but the Claude Desktop app on Mac and Windows. And you do need a paid plan to take advantage of these features. So an important choice, though, that they made, the profile uses a completely clean profile. So none of your saved logins, none of your history, etc. And that's one of the big updates that actually OpenAI rolled out to their ChatGPT Work last week, as they unveiled the non-technical version of Codex called the ChatGPT Work. Well, it can import all of your Chrome history, everything. So a much more robust browser on the Codex/ChatGPT Work side. However, at least even for me personally, the way that I've changed my work, this was one of the big things that it's just like, I wasn't really touching Claude Desktop anymore. At least not very much, right? I still use it for, adversarial kind of working with codecs, right? I do some more advanced things that I'll use Claude Desktop for, like running GPT-5 6 Soul inside of Claude Desktop. Conversely, I'm running Fable inside of Codex/ChatGPT Work, but I really wasn't using Claude Desktop as much as I was maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, mainly because of all the updates that Codex has. But at least for me, this one brings it a little bit more back into the conversation. So who's going to find this valuable? I think devs obviously already working inside Claude Code, security teams, right? Or if you're a general knowledge worker and you've been doing some things inside of Claude Code and you're like, wow, it would be nice to bring, some additional work that I do on the web into the fold. I think that's going to be a big one for you. All right, let's go to our next update. So this one is more of a quality of life one that I'm like, yes, I need this, and I think most people will enjoy it. So OpenAI launched universal search in ChatGPT, which lets you search in one place for all of your past chats, projects, images, and documents, all from one search box in the sidebar. So you can filter by content type, and clicking a request that opens the chat, project, or file directly. So yeah, this just launched a couple of days ago, kind of an under the hood. But again, this is one that should hopefully bring a big quality of life for the, hundreds of millions of weekly active ChatGPT users. The good thing, this rolls out to everyone, whether you have a free plan, paid plan, etc. And it did already roll out on the web and iOS and Android. So that's the other good thing. This also works inside of ChatGPT. So if you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time, regardless of what platform you're using, trying to find old chats, especially on the web. The good thing is, like, ChatGPT Work and Codex are great at this because one thread can read every single other thread and direct you. But at least on the web, this has always been something I've struggled with because sometimes chats, these searches will only search normal chats, or they might not search through your project. So it is good to have a single universal chat. Just makes ChatGPT much more accessible. So why is it useful? Well, I mean, your ChatGPT history just stops becoming a graveyard, right? That analysis that you ran in March, that you put a ton of time in, and maybe you use some of it, but there was a lot of it that you were like, hey, we could benefit from this. Where is it? The image that you did last week, the contract you uploaded in May, right? It's all findable in seconds versus having to scroll forever, right? I would have loved this like a year or so ago. There were actually a few instances, both in ChatGPT and Claude, where I had a very important, couple of very important chats that I worked on that I literally couldn't find because sometimes the searching will literally only search the thread name. So in multiple instances, I've had to go through, export all of my chats, import them in, use a thinking mode just to find, a certain chat that was, at least for me, very valuable or very useful that I needed to repurpose or reuse. So this is good. And like I said, this is rolling out to anyone. And who's going to find this useful? I mean, if you're a power user of ChatGPT, this is an instant, just quality of life upgrade. All right. Our next one, not everyone uses Superhuman, but I was actually surprised. So to help me plan for this show, I also see, hey, in our newsletter, what are those stories that people are clicking on the most? And I was actually surprised. This is one of our more clicked on stories this past week. So apparently a lot of you all use Superhuman for your mail. So, well, they launched a helpful new feature if you are a Superhuman mail user. And if you don't know what Superhuman is, well, it's kind of confusing now because it used to just be the I guess, minimal and fast email program, but now Superhuman itself, the name is, okay, let me just explain this a little better. So
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So, whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
So Grammarly, a popular writing tool that a lot of people use, technically acquired Superhuman, but they applied the Superhuman name to all of Grammarly's other tools. So it is a little confusing now, but here's what's new. If you do use Superhuman with their new auto drafts, so Superhuman launched a new version of auto drafts, which writes replies to your emails in your voice before you even open your inbox. So it does draft automatically two things: responses to messages waiting on you and follow-ups for emails other people haven't answered yet. So you open your inbox and the replies are sitting there for your review and to hit send. So the actual new thing here is the engine running it. So it now runs on frontier models from Anthropic and OpenAI, replacing an old GPT 3.5 version. Yeah, apparently they were still using GPT 3.5, which is maybe why the results weren't that good. So that's why now the drafts can actually sound like you. So right now, this is for paid plans only on business and enterprise. So you can set it up on the desktop and it syncs to mobiles, and it also the drafts sync with Gmail and Outlook. So who's going to find it useful? Well, obviously, if you're a paid Superhuman user struggling to keep up with emails, this is a good quality of life upgrade. And, at first I was almost like, should I even include this? Because this is one of those things that you can very easily do inside of Claude. You can very easily do inside of ChatGPT, Codex, ChatGPT Work. But I'm like, yeah, if you're using these tools, keep using them, right? But for me, it is technically very easy to build this inside of like ChatGPT Work or Codex, and it can send them all there. So part of me was like, all of this already exists and probably platforms you're already using. But if you are already a Power Superhuman user, this is for you. Speaking of app specific updates, this one I'll probably use because I'm a heavy Spotify user. And if you are too, this is one that you might enjoy. So Spotify launched Talk to Spotify, which lets you have an actual conversation with the app by voice or text to control your music, discover new stuff, and also ask about your own listening history. So the cool thing here is, well, it's back and forth, not just one-shot commands. So you can ask for an artist, then keep steering, and you can say, just hit his recent stuff or make it more upbeat. And then you can save and queue and follow right on from the conversation. So who has access right now? It is in beta, all right, but it's rolling out to people in the US, Ireland, and Sweden on iOS and Android. So yeah, you do have to be a paid user in one of those countries like I am. I haven't actually checked this one yet because this one just came out, but I'll be using this one. So why is it useful? Well, the differentiator is your data. So Spotify knows your playlists, your favorite artists, and your repeat listens. So it answers things like, when did I first listen to this song? And, no general chatbot, at least right now, can do that, right? Although Spotify does have some integrations with like ChatGPT as an example, it doesn't have that level of granular data. So this one for me, and the reason why I think it's very helpful, if you have a paid Spotify account and multiple people in your family use it, maybe if you have kids, you have, people with wildly different tastes in music, but everyone's using the same Spotify account, right? Like if you have, an Alexa or, home speaker, like that's what I do. And everyone's listening to all different kinds of music on my Spotify account. So, Spotify used to have, and they still do. It's these weekly playlists that update based on your history. So I used to love these playlists. They would update every Friday. I would literally used to open it every Friday and be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for my, the two playlists are called, I think like Discover Weekly and Release Radar based on like your listening history. And, so recently mine is just all off. So this is one I'm going to go in there and try to kind of, discover new music based on the genres that I actually listen to. So this one, obviously, maybe a little bit more on the personal side, but I think it's a pretty big update, especially if you are a power Spotify user like I am. All right, our next one. In this one, if you are missing Sora from OpenAI, right? Remember, about five or so months ago, OpenAI kind of announced that they were killing off all their side quests and really focusing, on their core products, which in theory has been great. And the company is growing just exponentially. But one of the downsides is there was these fantastic products that are now just shelfware. And one of those was Sora. And one of the most popular features of Sora was being able to essentially import your own self, your own avatar, right? You would have to verify your face and then you could create videos with yourself in them. Well, Gemini Omni has finally rolled that out. So this is technically a new feature in two different parts. So first, Google launched personal avatars inside of Gemini, which lets you record your face and voice, then generate AI videos of yourself on demand. So you just drop your avatar into prompts by typing the plus at sign and then your username. So as an example, you would type, create a video of at me singing with an orchestra, and then your likeness becomes a reusable asset inside of Gemini. So right now, you do have to have a paid account and be in the US and 18 or older. So yeah, all the, EU, UK, not available right now. So which is all, people are always like, why doesn't, the EU get this? Well, the European exclusion is almost always about, regulatory caution around biometric likeness, right? That's why so many features, especially ones like this that are hyper personalized for your own likeness or others, don't usually roll out sometimes at all to the EU. So and so it's not only inside of Gemini, but it's also inside of Google Vids. So here is what they said about using this new feature inside of Google Vids. They said, today we're rolling out 2 new updates to Google Vids to make it easier than ever to create, edit, and personalize your videos. Gemini Omni and personal avatars. Gemini Omni takes the hard work out of the editing process, so generating and refining high quality clips is as easy as writing a simple prompt. And with personal avatars, you have an entirely new way to star in videos without setting up a camera. So yeah, if you missed Google's big Gemini Omni announcement back in May, essentially it is the new family of VO models, but just much more powerful. Where their VO, so VO3, VO 3.1, were technically just video models, right? Gemini Omni is much more than that. It produces video, but it is like a world model. And I think it's much better at editing scenes than any other platform out there. So this is a pretty big one. I think, who has, why is it useful? Because this is like the talking, so many talking head videos that just need like background B-roll, right? So if you're someone in your company that's, whether it's for internal or external purposes, right, I wouldn't use these to actually do like a full avatar, like talking head video. That's not the thing. But if you or someone else, well, like me, right, I'm constantly talking head video right now. I am a talking head video. I don't necessarily, not part of my brand or the everyday AI brand necessarily, but when I'm yapping about all these things, I could very well instead put an avatar of me working on these things. So you don't just have to, look at my face made for radio and just be like, all right, guy, put something else on the screen. So, but I think there's a ton of great use cases for this. So if you are in L&D, training, marketing, content creation, social media, anything like this. And if you have a CEO as an example that's hard to nail down and you are trying to get more video content out there or something like this, right? Again, if you go through the proper channels, do all the approvals, data security, privacy, all that good stuff. But now this is such a weapon to have in your creative arsenal, right? I would have loved to have this like 18 years ago at one of my first jobs where I was creating a lot of video, and usually it was just kind of talking head of the CEO. And I would try to get some of this more like B-roll stuff, and it was just sometimes hard. So I think if you are a creative, if you are trying to have a stronger presence on social media for your company, but it's a little hard, this is great. So yeah, content creators, marketers, educators, is going to be huge. But I think the simple framing of this is it's kind of like a personal version of HeyGen inside of Gemini, right? So avatar video just went from being kind of a specialist tool to now going mainstream. All right, speaking of mainstream, let's tackle our next update because this one is very mainstream. So the new ChatGPT Work desktop app has a big update that I think a lot of ChatGPT power users are going to enjoy. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and read what Thibaut, the head of product at OpenAI, posted. It's a little easier just to read it, and this is brand new. I've been playing around with it a little bit today, but yeah, it hasn't even been out a full day yet. So Thibaut said, evening, we've gotten lots of great feedback on the new ChatGPT desktop app, so the Work app, which we didn't get totally right on the first try. And as a result, we made some changes. Number one, ChatGPT conversation history and projects are now visible in the sidebar. Also, your chat and work history now sync across web, mobile, and desktop. Local tasks will stay on your computer. Then you can now easily switch between chat and work modes inside ChatGPT on desktop, which is now also consistent with how it shows up on web and mobile. Nothing is changing for users on Codex mode. Thibaut says it's still the OG and best at what it does. So what does this mean? Well, to actually say what it means, and Thibaut did kind of say it there. He said, yeah, we didn't totally get it right on the first try. And that kind of explains the update. So long story short, if you missed this, I just did an episode on this on Wednesday where we went over ChatGPT Work, what it is, all that good stuff. But ChatGPT Work is essentially the non-technical version of Codex, right? OpenAI's autonomous desktop agent. But there is a ChatGPT Work on the web, and there is a ChatGPT Work on the desktop. So the problem was the ChatGPT Work didn't exactly sync up very well with what you were doing on ChatGPT on the web. It was kind of this separate pop-up that came up in the right-hand corner. So your chats were kind of there, but it just wasn't really intuitive to use because you would have all of your, essentially your tasks in your projects that lived or started with ChatGPT Work / Codex on the left sidebar. And then your ChatGPT history was kind of this orphan page on the right-hand side that wasn't really attached to anything. And then the big thing that people were like is saying like, hey, I love ChatGPT, but I run everything inside of projects, and projects did not sync. So essentially, OpenAI changed and technically fixed all of that because now not only do your projects sync to the desktop version of ChatGPT Work, right, but they're also in the left-hand sidebar. And the other good thing is from an aesthetic standpoint, now it does look the exact same as it does on the web, which I think is going to help people. And it looks the exact same as it did on mobile. So the first variation of this, it looked very similar on the web and on the mobile app. But then when you open the ChatGPT Work app, it looked and functioned completely different. So this is a great update for people who are trying out ChatGPT Work, or if you're like me, right? I've been using Codex since day one. And the good thing is, well, now you have that ChatGPT Work experience, which is just a very similar version of Codex. And then you have your familiarity with all of your normal ChatGPT chats and your projects. So if you're looking at this, if you scroll down, it's all going to be under your recents. So whether you start a new task inside of ChatGPT Work that's not attached to a project, it will go to your recents. And that's also where all of your new chats inside of ChatGPT will live. So if you do start a new chat inside of chatgpt.com, you don't attach it to a project, and then you go to ChatGPT Work on the desktop, it will be there, which is great, in the same place under recent. All right. Our last piece of AI news, and this is technically the biggest one. So, not just a new heavyweight on the soon to be open source, and I'll explain that, but this one is definitely resetting the open versus closed model paradigm. Yeah, we all thought it was the GLM 5.2 that was going to do this. Not anymore. Get ready, because you're going to be hearing a lot, especially if you are an AI large language model dork like I am. A lot of the conversation, I'm guessing, for the next month or two is going to be set around Kimi K3, and this has huge implications. So let me first explain what it is, what's new. So Chinese AI startup Moonshot released Kimi K3, a 2.8 trillion parameter model that is now the largest open model ever built, with a native vision mode and 1 million token context window. So here's the thing, it came in at third place overall on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, not far behind Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6. So that alone is mind boggling, right? Because we've been seeing this race just go back and forth, back and forth. And we thought that when Anthropic released Mythos and Fable 5, that this was essentially a new category, a new tier that no one else was ever going to touch. So not only, about a month later did GPT 5.6 enter that category, and on many of the most important benchmarks pass Fable 5, but now we have Kimi K3, a soon-to-be open model that has not only entered the conversation, but it has actually surpassed. Yes, an open model has surpassed, well, both Fable and GPT 5.6 on many important benchmarks. The best open model in the world now sits at 3 behind the 2 closed flagships. And the important thing that is thrusting this all back into the conversation is, well, Anthropic is supposed to be pulling Fable 5 from subscriptions this Sunday. So not only do they have this continued pressure from GPT 5.6, but now there is an open model that is going to be better. Even if you're paying $200 a month like I am, you're not going to get access to Fable 5. There are obviously rumors that maybe today or maybe early next week, we might be seeing Opus 5, and maybe that will even reset and be much closer to Fable level than currently Opus 4.8. All right. Anyways, let's talk a little bit more about Kimi K3, who has access, all that stuff. One important thing to note, though, right now, it's not technically an open source model, but it will be soon. Moonshot did say that they will be releasing the weights, so it will be an open weights model. They just haven't released the weights yet, but it just came out literally hours ago, and everything else that Moonshot has released in the past has been open. So this is live today in the Kimmy app on Kimmy.com. That's Kimi, and also in the Kimmy Work desktop app, as well as through the API. So they did say that they will release the full model weights by July 27th. So that's within like a week and a half. So at that time, anyone can download and self-host this. Obviously, it is a large 2.8 trillion parameter model. So if you think you're going to host this on normal consumer hardware, no, unless you've spent like $20,000 or $30,000 on your setup. So this is more for enterprise companies. Well, if you have the GPUs, you can do this. So who's going to find this valuable? Actually, no, let's first talk about why it's useful. Well, from the benchmarks alone, what we're seeing is its specialty is in long autonomous work, right? So they kind of shared 2 different case studies where K3 designed and verified a working chip in a single 48-hour unsupervised run, and it reproduced an astrophysics research result in about 2 hours that they say would have normally taken a researcher 1 to 2 weeks. And then the benchmarks obviously shows that it beats many models tested, including Fable 5 on web research, automation, spreadsheets, document reading, and more. And the crazy thing to me is on Arena, which goes head-to-head blind taste tests. One of the things that Anthropic has really kind of dominated this space is front-end design, right? So on the design arena, GPT-5.6 surpassed Anthropic's models, including Fable 5. And then on the LM arena, which is kind of like user preference, this model is now number one, Kimi K3. So it's interesting because that has always been one of Anthropic's kind of niches that they've owned, like front end design. And now on the two most important front end design benchmarks, they are no longer number one in either. So I'm personally excited to see what Anthropic is going to cook up. Maybe we'll see this with the Open 5 drop, but I would assume that their next model, maybe they've let their foot off the gas in terms of front end design because they've been so far ahead of everyone for so long. So I do and would assume that Opus 5 is probably going to surpass Fable 5, at least in those areas, because that's something I'm sure that Anthropic is going to be feeling a lot of pressure on. Aside from, pulling Fable 5, we'll see if they extend it again. But on the subscription package between GPT 5.6 and now Kimi K3, they're going to have to maybe justify why people are going to be subscribing. But a lot of people are pointing to that just means we're getting an Opus 5 here soon. So who's going to find this new Kimi K3 valuable? Enterprises and developers who want frontier adjacent agents without that frontier pricing or vendor lock-in. The crazy thing is, this is literally now an open, soon to be open model from a Chinese, startup that now benches ahead of Opus 4.8, and it is in the same tier, although technically lower than Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Soul. All right, so an interesting one here, resetting the open versus closed race, and you know what it means for all of us, y'all? We're going to continue to get more and more models, better models, and hopefully at cheaper prices now that we have an open model, presumably pushing the cost down. So this one here with Kimi K3, definitely more of an enterprise play. Like I said, this is not really for consumer hardware, although the prices are also much cheaper via the API. All right, so that's a wrap. A lot new that we went over today. I hope this one was helpful. Like I said, we do this every single Friday, our Friday feature show where we bring you the latest and the greatest of what's new that you can actually use today. I was actually kind of bummed because we also had from Google Gemini Notebook that came out, but it wasn't available to all paid users. So that's the thing. We do this if you have a base paid account. These are the things that you can use today to grow your company and career. All right. If this was helpful, do me a favor. Please subscribe on the podcast and go to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back Monday and every day after that for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.